Hi, everyone. Welcome. Grab a seat and get comfortable. You have just entered the Smartest Doctor in the Room podcast, where you can get the best information anytime, anywhere. I'm your host, Dr. Dean Mitchell.
Today, we will be discussing the importance and proper way to do weight training. My guest today is an expert in this area with a really fascinating background, and he will teach you how to strengthen not only your body, but I think by the end, your soul as well.
I want to take a moment to thank the sponsors that make this podcast possible.
I know you may already know from listening to my podcast that I specialize in treating patients with toxic mold exposure. It's become a serious problem for many years as we deal with the hurricanes and floods throughout the country. Even simple bathroom water leaks from a toilet in your home over time can contribute to mold buildup. I can help patients that suffer from the symptoms of toxic mold, but I also rely on the patients getting their current residence inspected so they are not continually being exposed. My go-to person for mold exposure is Joe Reese. Joe is a certified mold inspector with decades of experience. He is super thorough and gives you a straightforward assessment and tells you whether it's safe to live in your home or if there is mold. I should know. I used Joe when I moved to my new home 4 years ago. Fortunately, when I moved in, I smelled an unusual odor in my basement, and I immediately called Joe. He came over with his instruments, and he found the problem. Afterwards, I had remediation, and the problem was solved. Joe does inspections all throughout the country. He welcomes calls to his cell phone at 908-451-4592. You can also reach him by email at jprconsultants7929@gmail.com. Remember, mold in your home is not a good thing, but thankfully it's a problem that can be fixed. Jerzy Gregorek is a 4-time world weightlifting champion who back in the 2000s started the UCLA weightlifting program. He immigrated here from Poland over 40 years ago, and he is the co-author of the best-selling book, The Happy Body, with his wife, Anelia, which I have read probably at least 10 times. I love the book. I have a copy of it right here.
Wow.
Again, is,
the original.
Super good. So I'm really happy and excited to welcome Jerzy Gregorek to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dean.
All right. You look very toned in that shirt, so
hey,
I'm very
just
jealous.
In the gym, so no.
All right, so Jerzy, I want to really get into it because again, over the years, from being involved in sports myself, I'm a tennis player, and I've always done weights over the years too. I was always getting hurt. That's why I really liked your book. The whole approach. So I want to ask you a couple of things. First, for a long time, there was this big debate between strength training and cardio. And I think you're really one of the first people in the country to really emphasize that strength training is very important, maybe even more important than cardio. So maybe you could give us a little bit of your thoughts on the whole approach.
Sure. First of all, we have misunderstanding about cardio and strength training, because strength training is also cardio.
It's true, right?
And endurance is what we are talking about. It's something that we prolongly do over 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is, right? And we consider that cardio. A sprinter is a cardiovascular athlete. So a sprinter after 10 seconds has really a heartbeat about 200 or 240. So that when sprinter sits on the bench, he's in extreme cardio. His heart beats about 200 and take about 3-4 minutes to come to the 90 or 80. So cardiovascular is not doing something over a period of 20 minutes continuously. Cardiovascular is also strength training when you do something for 5-10 seconds and then you rest because it's you use 100% of your power.
That's a really great point. That's true, because people always think how long I exercise matters. And what I think essentially you're saying is no, it's probably how much effort you're putting in, even if it's a shorter amount of time. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes. So the quality of power or strength depends of the time. The longer is something you do, the weaker you become and slower.
Right.
So when you compare a sprinter to a marathon runner and everyone between, then you will have the most powerful, the fastest athlete, that is a sprinter. And then you have marathon runner, the slowest, right? And then you think about and somebody, 5K, 10K, and because of what they do, the body becomes. So Usain Bolt is 6'4" and is about 205 pounds. And you have marathon runners who are about 120, right? And then you have 5K and then 800 meters and everybody else. The muscle is dropping as athletes keep doing whatever they are doing. Also, inflammation is going up as well. So,
can I ask you something that you're bringing up a really important point? I want to make sure I understand this. So, and it's interesting too. Like I've seen like sprinters who, you see in the Olympics, they have super powerful upper body, their thighs. I mean, I know that a lot of them squat or bench press, really high numbers that I would never think of in a runner. But from what you're saying is if you were to compare a person, let's say who stayed in shape over the years, that was a sprinter and doing the weights because he needs that burst of energy compared to, let's say, a sprinter who's like 50 or 60 years old, let's just say that, versus a marathon runner who's 60 years old, who a lot of people would be thinking is in great shape because he can run a marathon. You're saying you would take the sprinter because he's probably healthier? Am I saying that correctly?
Yes. Well, when you have people that do something for a long period of time, right? Let's say 1 hour, half an hour, and so on. So then the power drops, inflammation goes up. So because of that, wear and tear happens to people. It means that the joints, everything, whatever is in them is compromised. So they can develop arthritis, they can develop the problems with the sarcopenia, so the muscle drops as well.
Right, they get the loss of muscle, sarcopenia, very important, right?
Yeah,
big problem in society today for elderly people.
That's why a sprinter is 200 pounds and the marathon runner is 120. And
right.
The same bicyclist, right? So there are not many endurance athletes in the world. Most athletes are power athletes that, whatever they do, it only lasts 5 seconds, the most.
Wow.
So any games that we watch in track and field, when people jump and throw things and so on, all of it is about 5 seconds, the most.
Right. That's true. I never thought about that. Right. Like you see a javelin thrower, he gets up there for, 20 seconds or a shot putter. But, you look at some of those people, Jerzy, I look at some of those people. I mean, look, they're Olympic athletes. So we're seeing the best of the best. But sometimes you look at them and say, God, how good a condition could that person be in? He's just doing something for 5 seconds. But you're saying he's got to be in very good condition because he's got to generate all that power in a short amount of time. Is that?
Yeah, that's an extreme condition, right, of the power people. So we can compare, I coached one day this Zen master, and then I talked to him about that. And he said, I have an image for you, really. And I said, really? I said, yeah. So I imagine this. A stream goes down about 20 miles per hour, and my body can go 30 miles per hour as a boat. And if I want to go 10 miles up the river, then I have to go 30% of 30 miles per hour. It means I use 100% of my boat. But your body can go 100 miles per hour. It means that if you want to go 10%, then 10 miles per hour up, use only 30% of your power. It means one thing, that you will never break, because I tried to tell him that my body is indestructible. And of course, the master said, everybody is destructible. But then I told him the story. And then after that, he said, I will work on it. Half a year after, he called me and said, my boat can go 40 miles per hour.
Okay, let me ask you this, because I know that you work with top tier athletes. But let's say you would get like an older doctor like me, and I came to your, is it a clinic or gym? I'm not sure what you
Yeah,
call it.
enter, yeah.
It's probably a combination of everything.
Yeah,
If
it
I was
is.
to come there, how do you look? I would say, like, because I read what I really loved in Happy Body also. I loved the stories. They were really good. You know, they were about everyday people who were able to change their life. So I don't know if you can, you know, if I were to come to you, I'm 63 years old. I'm a doctor. I go to my office, obviously, several times a week. I like to play tennis twice a week. I lift weights twice a week. I've had, fortunately, over the years now, a little bit better instruction so I don't get hurt as much. What do you do when somebody comes to you, just in general? Do you, you know, like how do you assess them? Do you want to find out what their goals are, or are you more interested in looking at it and say, hey, Dr. Dean, you're not as fit as you think you are, you know, because you can't do this or that, you know, et cetera.
Yeah, I don't put the judgment. You are not as fit as you supposed to be, or whatever it is. I have tea with a person, and I hear the story of the person, and then I take the person to the gym, and then find out the weaknesses of the body, and develop the plan to improve. So I engage usually with the happy body and see where flexibility is set. It means I start with improving flexibility, but I have to know where are limitations of flexibility. When I
Right.
find these flexibility limitations, for example, squat, when a person squat to down and start leaning forward or heels going off the ground, then I find a place where actually the person can squat perfectly down and have the perfection of the squat.
So obviously, you're saying technique is very important. I mean, I think that's why so many people get hurt. They don't really,
Yes.
they, you know, I remember back in the day, just for our listeners, I sometimes used to give up doing weights because I used to get those magazines. And not that I was doing a lot of weight, but I tried to copy what they were doing without having a really good trainer or someone watching my technique. And you know, the next day my back would be, not the next day, for the next 3 weeks, my back would be so sore. I was like, oh, I'm not doing this anymore. You know, because you know, I felt like I was hurting myself. So it's really important, obviously, for the listeners, if you can, to spend that little extra money to make sure somebody is watching how you do things.
Yeah, you know, compromise is very easy in life, right? It's easy to do wrong way.
Yeah.
It's really something that I recently coached this a tennis player, and then he's actually 61, and he's a very good player. And after 4 months, I finally, after coaching, he says, you know, I have less pain. I understand the recovery. I understand how much I should play, and I choose now not to play certain days and play. And
Right.
well, thank you for balancing all of it for me, so I actually can improve my game and not really think that the more I play, the better I become. But
Right. Great point. Great point. That's a guy's a smart guy. We were going to get into that. All right. Let me ask you this too, because we're going to get into a couple of these really specific things because I want to know, and I think the listeners want to know. So I want to ask you too, you know, I had on the podcast several years ago. I don't know if you know him, but William Evans, he wrote the book called Astrofit. William worked with the astronauts because, you know, they come back from space and they have all these muscle issues from being in zero gravity. And so he developed a special program for them. And, you know, he's like a physiologist. But, you know, in some of the things that you read about, I know I don't do this, but they say sometimes like really like when you do weights, do, you know, whatever, figure out your like 1 rep maximum or failure, whatever that means to me. Let's say that's like your, you know, like you go like slightly below that. Or do you do, as I sometimes try to tell patients, like, you know, you start low, like 2 pounds, 5 pounds, 10 pounds. How do you determine, let's say, again, if I were to come to you and say, Dean, you know, okay, we're going to show you an upper body, some biceps curls, some triceps. I mean, how do you determine the starting weight and the regimen?
So let's say it's the press, front press, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say you take the bar, 45 pounds bar, and you press it. And I watch you. And then I ask, okay, any pains, any tensions in the body? So you have to really relax and tell me whether you have any tension in the shoulders and somewhere. If you have, then I ask more questions about that. and I adapt the future plan to it. If you don't have any pains, no problems, then we go up, let's say 10 pounds up, and you press the bar and I watch it. And then, then you go up, and then, at a certain point, it's 80 pounds. And you say, well, I feel it, and I feel a little bit tingling in my shoulder or my back. So then I go back from that. I know where the limitations are. So then we set up, let's say, at 60 pounds, and I develop the program there. Let's say I will give you 20 rounds of 1 repetition every 1 minute with, 60 pounds, so 55 pounds. And we start there. Then you go through the day like that, and you write me difficulties from 1 to 10.
Right, that's like they call it the Borg scale, right? Like the way right, how much effort. I mean, I think it's people don't appreciate that, but it's really like sort of knowing your own body to know how much physical effort you put in, right?
And there's also I have to know your body too, to not to compromise, your progress. So if you go too fast, then eventually you will be overtrained or injure yourself. If we don't go fast enough, you will be disappointed. So it is really finding the place in the middle, or in the place where actually progress happens without compromising recovery is extremely important. And that it requires really great coaches actually to make it happen, because I need your numbers. So that's why I tell my clients, do not change my numbers. You go home for a week and you write all the numbers, right? Whatever you did, whatever I gave you, then when you come back, you are in my brain. But if you change numbers, then you're out of my brain. You take so then progression happens because when the person comes in 1 week, they analyze the lifts, analyze the reps and the difficulties, and then I go from there forward, or I go backward, or whatever I need to do. Do I need to healing? Then I do healing. Do I need the progression? I do. If I need adaptation to keep more days the same weight, to adapt to that weight, then that's what I do.
Well, let me ask you this too, right? Because you're talking about recovery, especially with that other gentleman, that doctor, which is so important. The funny thing is, because I know when I do weights, sometimes I would do more that didn't bother me, but it was a day or two later. Sometimes I would have intense soreness, which I really didn't mind. I actually like when my muscles feel sore, but sometimes you could get pain. So I know what I commonly hear too is like you obviously alternating upper days versus lower. Do you recommend that? Or like, let's say if you do, just for example, if somebody does the upper body, if they divide it that way, like on a Monday, not to do it again to like a Thursday, and then maybe do lower body, or do you feel it should all still be integrated?
It depends on the purpose. If the purpose of a person is to have a good life, to have the exercise system that covers everything, like brushing teeth, and you train the body from every angle and so on, that person should do every day the same thing. And that person just
interesting. Okay.
Can like the happy body or Bikram yoga. So, but if you are an athlete and then you want to be a more powerful athlete, let's say you play volleyball or football or baseball, then you need to be trained differently. So that means that you use certain exercises, and when you use the snatch, let's say, then you need 1 week off to recover after the nervous system burnout. But if you do the clean and jerk, you need about 10 days. So it depends now how you use the body and how many repetitions you do and what is the purpose of it. Then you create really the right numbers.
So it's really very individualized based on what people's goals are, you know.
Completely. So, every client that comes to me has a completely different climbing toward the top of the mountain. But the top of the mountain is the same. The power is the same. So they go to the same place, but they climb differently.
That's a good analogy. Let me ask you this too. If you have any special tricks What, because you hear so many different, especially professional athletes, do things like post-workout. Some of them, the football players jump into an ice bath, which I guess makes sense because it's like they're in a car accident. They have so much contact. Other people I've heard recommend contrast showers, or you go from hot to cold, or I don't know if there are any creams or supplements. Like, is there anything in general that you think is safe for a lot of the listeners to maybe think about? I mean, I even myself, sometimes I like to take those Epsom salt baths. They're very soothing, so I can recover faster.
You're talking about really something important because it's recovery. So in Poland, when I trained at the center in Warsaw, so we had about 40 minutes training, 1 hour, but 1 hour and a half recovery. So that's what you really covered. It was really interesting because we started with shower. Shower was hot and cold, extreme to the hot to the cold. Then we went into the steam room, and then we stay about 10, 15 minutes. The next step was the step where was the ice bath. So you walk into the room and then there is a bath and you have to submerge for about 5 seconds. And if you want to come out there, you have 2 guys on both sides hold you under, and that's it. So, so then after that, you go into a special bucket and you have water massage, very strong streams. And after that, to the adjustment, hand adjustment, when a chiropractor can adjust your body, stretch and so on, and you go to the next cycle. So these 2 cycles had about 1 hour and a half. But when I came home, sometime I saw my bed and I dropped and I slept for 2 hours. But when I dropped, I thought that I stood up after 10 seconds. It was 2 hours, boom. And I thought,
you're out. You were exhausted.
I needed the recovery, right?
Yeah. But Jerzy, what would you say for the average person that doesn't have that? If they want to, as I said, they're doing their workout or they're doing their tennis or whatever, basketball or something for an hour, and they want to try to have a good recovery. Do you recommend like massage? Do you recommend taking hot baths or icing, in general?
All of it is good. So
all of it's good.
Yeah,
okay.
all is good because recovery is important. The one,
and obviously sleep.
Sleep is too, right? So you have to really get better, progress, and so on. So if you don't recover, you fail on the recovery, always. So now heating is tricky because heating is inflammation. Cooling down is not. So people who live long, they have cold bodies.
Yeah?
Yeah, not hot.
Really?
So when you exercise, you generate inflammation, heat in the body system. So the more you exercise, the more inflammation. So the sprinter has the least inflammation system than the marathon runner. So after running 1 hour, you have 6 hours of cooling down. And after, let's say, sprinting for 1 hour, for 10 seconds every 3 minutes, you have only 30 minutes. So it's the heating. Heating is not good. Cold is good.
So let's say, okay, so let's just say this too. Let's say again, this is all about me, this podcast. If I was to play very intense tennis, which I did, I just played with a pro. I really like to go at it. When I come back and I'm sore, I'm better off taking, even though it's so nice to take a hot shower and be in the steam, it's better to do a cooler shower.
Yes. So, weightlifters sometimes, they have buckets in ice water buckets and they put their hands because hands are.
The hands are sore, right? Yeah.
So they put into
interesting.
So
But what about the contrast?
Right about the cold, yes.
But is the contrast also very good too? Because you're sort of like, cold reduces circulation. Obviously, obviously reduces inflammation, but it reduces circulation, whereas heat opens it up. Or does that negate the benefit if you go cold, hot, cold, hot?
We did both, so heat is okay. I really like hot, not too much of it. Cold is tough. It's really hard. That's why Wim Hof, introduces this breathing. So our adrenaline pump. So it's easier to face the cold cold is really healthy. It's really good.
Yeah,
And
I would assume
there
too.
are,
I would assume too. You're against taking any type of, like Advils, non-steroidals. People get sore, right? Because I think that inhibits the recovery, even though
not
it makes
only
people out of pain.
not only it takes away from a coach to see really what happens with the athlete. It's because you're masking something and you give different messages. We do when we compete. When really you fight for to win or not, yes, that can be even 10 Advils, right? But in a regular training, no, everything is up. So
Yeah.
you don't try to do those things. You try to heal your body as you train, and then adapt to the healing system. And then you cannot have the Advils and other things or belts. If you hurt yourself, you have to take everything, all the straps and wraps and belts away, and then you know where is the problem, and then you start healing the problem.
That makes sense.
Once you heal it, then to prevent, you use all the straps and wraps and belts and so on.
Okay. Let me ask you this too. I know that you and again, Neil, your wife, are weightlifting champions. Now, hopefully the people they won't be able to hear this on the podcast, but on our YouTube, they'll be able to see it. You are extremely toned. You look very fit. And it was very striking to me too, when I was looking at your book, Happy Body. I mean, you look trim. So you don't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So don't think that, that's a good thing. Sorry about Arnold, but suppose you see these bodybuilders, I don't know, it looks like a statue, but it looks, I don't know, look, there's part of it that's not so attractive. I don't know, because you see like every muscle popping everywhere. But I mean, so is the point that to be really strong and toned doesn't necessarily mean you have to have hypertrophic muscles? Is that correct?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So
because they probably don't have the flexibility that you do. I don't think Arnold could get into a bow pose or something, yoga wise.
No, that wouldn't happen, right? So bodybuilders, they don't have to perform. So they train the body differently than performance athletes, and like powerlifters, weightlifters, track and field, and game athletes, they have to perform. So if you have to perform, you have to be strong and fast. You cannot be really just only strong. You have to be strong, and in order to do that, you have to be flexible, extremely flexible, because as soon as you compromise flexibility, you hurt yourself. So that's why half squats, let's say for volleyball players, is not a good idea, because once they play, they can enter the positions passing the half squat, and then they can have problems with their knees and so on. So in the training, an athlete should be more extreme than in the competition. That's why it's important to bring the athlete to the breaking records, and especially the muscle and so on. But the nervous system for athletes is more important than strength. So athlete has to be fast. The strength is supporting the movement, but it's on the ability to move. But the speed of the athletes, like a quarterback, let's say, right, has to be really quick and agile and capable of moving very fast. Gretzky was called soft hands because he was so fast that could slow down at a certain point and has the millisecond for pushing his puck the way he wanted, because others were slower than him.
Yeah, interesting.
So
you also mentioned a lot in the book, which I thought was very important, the importance of flexibility and posture. Unfortunately, you see so many people as we age, they're stooped over, so many things that probably really are detrimental to their quality of life. And maybe that's why they say like the number one things why people die or get, end up infirmed when they get, older is that, they fall. And again, if you look at a lot of people's posture, it seems like that could, predispose them to that. So What do you do also? Do you think, is it the weightlifting? Is there something else, just, or the stretching that you recommend in the book? And when you work with clients who are saying, look, I'm not looking to be a top athlete, but I want to age gracefully and obviously be able to have a high functioning way of life.
So the happy body is perfect for the person like that. It has flexibility, it has some strength, it has possibility to use microprogression to restore the strength and restore the flexibility. Flexibility, like you said, is really important, because if you are not flexible, you will be tight and you will have inflammation in the joints. And once the inflammation sets up, then arthritis follows, and then painkillers follow. So, all the flexibility is number one, the first really to fight for, and not.
Well, you show that a lot in the book. As I said, I try to emulate. I'm fortunately working with somebody. You do a lot of those things. Where you go, but again, doing it correctly, where you're sitting on the floor and you're trying to reach for your toes, and But again, people have to really know the proper way to do it, otherwise they get hurt. But again, you feel like that's pretty important, since again, so many of us sit a lot in front of a computer. We're sitting in a car. I mean, all these things that would tighten up your muscles and decrease your flexibility.
Yeah, posture should be side effects, should not be something that we really train. So like in the happy body, the posture becomes perfect because it's a side effect of the training, not really aim of the training. So that's why we have certain exercises that, you have the perfection that the spine becomes the other way. Because the spine should be aware, right? It should be going that way and back. So it should be used. You can see how it is used watching the picture, right? The spine goes back and the spine goes forward, right? To throw the ball. So the core really throws the ball and not really the arm. So it's really important in any sport, really, to volleyball play, to arch back and hit with the body and not with the arm. But usually people become not flexible, and they where it happens first, your body simply slouch a little bit. Once you do it that way, the sternum goes down. The sternum moves down, right? The sternum moves down, so the person cannot see her head because their head goes down too.
Right.
But simultaneously, their head has to go.
Right. That's what. Right.
That compresses the cervical spine, right? And
right.
Then the spine, the thoracic spine, fuses and then becomes really fused, and the person cannot go back. So during this time, also shoulders go forward, and people think that they have problems with shoulders, right? But they don't have a problem with shoulders. They have a problem with spine. Look at that.
Right. Well, Jerzy, let me. You're demonstrating great things. I hope the people in the YouTube video appreciate it. But so, do you have to sometimes really work on people's flexibility before you start doing the weights? Because if they're not in good posture or whatever, and they start doing these weights, they're going to get hurt, right?
Yeah, you can find always the place to start with the even exercises that they are difficult. So let's say you have the press and the squat. You can go squat like 3 inches, and then you go down, and you can try that, and you go progressively down.
So even if they're like kyphotic, with their bending forward and their neck sticking out, you can at least start to do something. But you're going to also obviously really want to work on their posture and flexibility.
Yeah. So you really think about vertical line, and want that vertical line. In the happy body, there are about 5 exercises that focus on arching the spine the other way. Not only the forward, but forward too, and back. So
well, you mean like the yoga pose, like Cobra or something like that?
No, it's the arching backward the spine. So there are 3 exercises. They are particular for that, and then also you have the overhead squat and squat, press. Then when the thoracic spine is arched backward. So these are the important exercises that create the side effect of perfect posture. And when people have a bridge thoracic spine like this, then I need to make it the other way, right? It takes sometimes 2 years, 3 years to open the spine, but the spine can be open.
Do you work with chiropractors or physical therapists? If you need
Yes.
assistance with that on the patient?
Also, they come to me, right?
Oh, you do that also?
With the spine. Yeah,
Let me ask you.
we don't have really the culture of a system that would help us to keep our flexibility and have a good life when it comes to the quality, physical quality. We don't have at all. I think that the Happy Body is one of the first kind of exercise music system that really is designed.
No, you brought it you brought a lot of it all together because a lot of things are gimmicky. People come out with all these things and not like taking the overall approach, which I like what you did.
If you've been following the podcast, you may know I practice holistic functional medicine and immunology. In fact, at Mitchell Medical Group, we've been treating chronic fatigue patients for 3 decades. It's critical in this work to have a trusted pharmacy that can compound medications for our sensitive patients' needs. ITC Pharmacy has been our go-to pharmacy the entire time. They can make medications ranging from thyroid hormones to dye-free medications for all of our highly sensitive, even allergic patients. If you or your holistic doctor are looking for these very specific patient medications, you can contact ITC at 888-349-5453. They have licenses throughout the country and can have medications delivered right to your doorsteps. My patients have been so pleased with their service, and you will be too.
I want to just touch also a little bit on, before we get to the spiritual side, about nutrition. Now, when I was reading Happy Body over several times, I kind of smiled because I think you and I had a similar experience. You were vegetarian for a while, I believe. And I was also. I went out to Dean Ornish's program in California in the 1990s, and I came back and I started following a very strict vegetarian diet. I thought that was healthy. It was good for your heart. And I kept on getting sicker and sicker. My hair was falling out. My skin was getting dry. People thought I was ill. I lost a lot of weight, and I just didn't. I mean, after a while, I just didn't feel well. So, my family started yelling at me, "Eat some meat," And I kind of came to that conclusion I needed to. And since then, I honestly on the podcast, I've been doing this 5 years. I've interviewed every top quote nutritional expert, and every one of them has their own thing. Even though it seems to me that the Mediterranean diet is probably the safest. But I was curious what I think now you are no longer vegetarian, you eat meat, you eat fish. Like, what do you advise your clients, to have a happy body?
I'm a vegan for 15 years now.
You're vegan?
For 15 years.
But I thought you stopped that. You said you were getting sick.
I did, but that was 30 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So what happened to me, exactly what you said, but I figured out why.
Oh, okay. Tell us. I'm interested.
Here is why. So I was a vegetarian. I thought I was vegetarian, but I was not. What I was the grain eater.
Ah, well, because you're hungry. I mean, what else is there to eat?
No, it's just, when you are vegetarian, you eat a lot of beans and rice and bread.
But you're hungry. You can't starve, right? Mm-hmm.
But there is not much nutrition in grains.
Right.
But most nutrition is only in 2 products, animal products and vegetable.
Right.
Only just 2.
But there's very little protein in vegetables. So maybe you'll explain.
It's a lot. In spinach, spinach is more protein than in beef. And
really? Okay, I guess Popeye was right. Okay.
Yeah, it's the same protein. It's 50% protein, like salmon. It's really high. But the vitamins and minerals are higher than animal products.
That's true.
So now I eat about, when I was grain eater, I was eating half a pound of veggies maybe a day. Today, I eat 8 pounds of veggies.
You ate 8 pounds of what?
Veggies a day.
Wow. That's not a job.
No, because you make it.
But that doesn't get boring, or,
Oh, it's delicious, Anila is doing this, his amazing salads and then We are doing.
So you don't eat fish anymore. You don't eat any type of animal beef. Nothing.
No eggs, no honey, nothing. For 15
Wow.
I love
And
it.
do you supplement? Because, again, what I find,
Supplement.
because honestly, Jerzy, what I find, my medical practice, because I do immunology and holistic medicine, that when I do have patients that are vegetarian, okay, then some of them may be eating a lot of grains, because they're hungry, but I do see a lot of B12 deficiency, a lot of iron deficiency, because they just can't get it from those foods. So I obviously, if that's something they want to continue, I strongly advise them to supplement. Do you take certain supplements to in addition, just for your training and everything? No.
No supplements, no medicine, nothing.
Wow.
And all this like B12, sometimes I go to a doctor and say, your B12 is low, right? But I'm really good, right? So there is no sign in me that I am not good. So
You got to be careful with that. That's a little. I'll just give a little medical advice. That's a little sneaky. When I see patients less than like 400 or 500 or even 300 or less, sometimes look, you look super fit, but it can, the nervous system and everything needs those vitamins. So,
yes. It's like mine is about between 300 and 600. And then, but, I don't use any supplements, and no medicine. Actually, one day went to a doctor, but my doctor was not there. So another doctor came, and she came into the room, and she left the room. She said, "Excuse me," and then she came back, and then she said, "Well, are you Jerzy Gregorek?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, I'm sorry, but they expected a different person here from the chart than you are." It's like she couldn't put a 70-year-old to
the chart to the person.
To her image, what
right.
is 70 years old, looking like
Yes.
and behaves and so on. So, there is a lifestyle that we can live for a fantastic life, and it requires, certain exercise. So you don't over-exercise, but you exercise for benefit of the muscle and posture and flexibility and strength and mobility. So you don't lose those things, but you don't have to exaggerate. You don't have to do too much. The happy body is only like 30 minutes a day, and it's amazing. I cannot imagine my life without the happy body. All athletes that I coach, they have to do the happy body to recover, not to really have the main training. But for people, the happy body is a main training to restore every day the mobility, the flexibility.
Jerzy, should the happy body going through, again, I read the book should it take 30 minutes or 60 minutes, no more than that a day to really do a reasonable amount?
No, you don't need to do more. It's like a gardening, really. When I watch, the blue zones, you have people who live 100, right, and more. They really don't exercise much. They do gardening. They walk up to the.
Sorry, who is that? The
blue zones people.
Oh, the blue zones, right. Mm-hmm.
Right. So they are.
That's true. You're 100% correct. That's right.
So there is no exercise system in their life, but they look really healthy. They sound healthy. They sound easy, actually.
Well, I think the other secret, honestly, is unfortunately, I think also the air is very healthy where a lot of these people live. I think, like in those Mediterranean places. I think that's one big overlooked thing. And of course, lifestyle too. They don't have the crazy stress as we have in New York, or maybe you have in Los Angeles, because there's a lot of stress.
I live in Silicon Valley, so I live in a place that that stress is the probably highest in the world.
Wait, where are you? You're in Silicon Valley now?
Silicon Valley, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you were in Santa Monica. Okay.
I'm Woodside. I'm just really in the center of.
You're in the center of the
most intense people on the planet.
Yeah, well, you know why? Because everybody's homes are $5 million.
Well, the thing is that I coach a lot of them to how to manage the stress, how to have the happy body mindfully, how to calm down, how to breathe, how to lower down the breath to release the stress, and how to deal with it mentally.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good segue. We're going to take a break for a minute. So, Jerzy, tell me, you and Anila are not just world-class weightlifters. You're also writers. And as you have in your background, you're a philosopher. Hard choices, easy life. Easy choices, hard life. So maybe tell me a little bit what got you interested in writing. And I heard, I think you have a library like mine with hundreds of books, and sounds like you're a very voracious reader. So tell me that other side of you. Where did that come from?
I was a freedom fighter in Poland, Solidarity.
You were a freedom fighter.
Yeah, and I was one of the leaders of the strike in Warsaw. And because of that, I had to immigrate. I went to Sweden, and in Sweden, I was exposed in solidarity with people that they were exceptional. They were really people that existed on this planet. They had unconditional love. And I thought it was a fake always in my life. I was 27 then. But then I was exposed to people that actually existed on this planet and had unconditional love. Once my whole inside was completely shifted because of that. Then I went to Sweden, and in Sweden, there were a lot of people who really suffering from not being with their families. The families were divided, and they had hunger strikes and depression and so on.
This was in Sweden.
Yes. So I was, in the solidarity in Sweden when I left Poland. And
right.
I was working with people there and helping them to overcome that. And I was really good at that. And there was this psychologist that I helped as well. And then she said, I don't know what you do, but what you do, you should really write about it. I've never been a writer. And then she said, well, maybe I will open the clinic and you do what you do, and I will watch what you do, and maybe I'll learn something. I said, I'm not going to stay in Sweden. I'm going to America. So then she said, well, then you have to write. But I've never written anything. And then she said, well, just go home, take a pen and write. And then I went home and I took the pen, and whatever really I wrote became a poem on the page. I was writing in poetry. I was
about to ask you, do you write in Polish, even maybe happy body, and then translate to English, or you write in English directly?
Well, that's we go forward, right? So in America, I became the coach and coaching people, and people really loved what I was doing. And now how I was doing and what I was doing, I wanted to put together, a system that people could actually follow without me. And that's what the happy body happened. But the happy body was inside of us, but not outside. So we didn't know how to write it. So we hired a writer. And then after about half a year, the writer brought us the happy body. Anila said, it's horrible. It's just like...
yeah, I know that feeling. Nobody could do it like you.
Yeah, then when we hired another one, it happened the same thing. So I said, Anila, we have to become writers. So we both entered the MFA in Creative Writing program in Vermont, and we studied there for 2 years. And after the 2 years, it took us about 10 years to write The Happy Body.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It really took time. When you want to write something what is organically inside you and what you do, it's really very difficult. We had a editor that we were meeting on a weekly basis, and writing was really tough, very hard.
Yeah.
And it took about 10 years, and then we finished the Happy Body. when the Happy Body was published, then something else happened is that I thought that people will just do it because it's there. The plan is there. But it's really hard for people to implement things. That it all becomes the hard choices. And I watched that, and I started developing some ideas and some feelings watching people suffering. I said, well, when people suffer, then poetry is there. And I started writing poems, dialogues, and develop ways of helping people with awareness about voices, internal voices, and how to deal with emotional, eating habits and how to change them, how to use creativity, how to watch negativity, how to flip, and so on. So, all our books and my books are all about that. It's a complete devotion to people and helping them to implement what is really hard and make it happen, manifest it.
So let me ask you this too, as we're getting near the end, but it's important. It really struck me when I was reading the in Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss, where I think he edited the podcast he did with you.
Right.
And you, from reading that, clearly you've had a challenging life. You mentioned in there that you had an alcohol problem at age 15. You got expelled from school. I don't want to bring up all the bad things, but what's amazing was that I think you mentioned that one of your friends got you into weightlifting, and then you got in with a crowd of different people. And then you became a fireman in Poland. What would you say helped you turn around your life? Was it the people around you, or was it something inside of you that was saying, Jerzy, I can be better. I need to become a different person?
I was in a place where I couldn't help myself. So I was in a suicidal place, and I would be that if I was not helped. So I was blessed. I was lucky that Miracle was there for me, and it pulled me out by really shifting. You see, I understand how creativity works in the world. And how focus on creativity and not of analyzing really what happens to us is extremely important. So what happened, Mirek created for me possibility to work out every day and go have a beer and come back and work out the next day and next day and next day. And slowly I started shifting and started really liking the exercise. Didn't like it before. And then more and more and more, and my world shifted. But it took about 2 or 3 years to really shift that. So, it took about 2 years before I could have my mind that I was able to pull myself out of something. Of course, in the future, I had the situations where I had to use that mind, but I had already that mind. The mind that people have sometimes when they cannot help themselves is a very, very hard, difficult place to be.
Sure. Well, especially when you're young, that was going to be my last question to you. If the president of the United States called up Jerzy and said, Jerzy, we got a problem here in the United States. These kids are all on iPhones, on iPads, sitting in front of monitors. They're out of shape. They're overweight. What can we do in either the school system or outside of the school to get people, even at a young age, healthy in their body and healthy in their mind? Because they do go so hand in hand.
Well, you really have to focus on experience as the most value, the experience. Experience means like a experience of the joy and happiness and so on. So it really has to be brought into schools. So how we would do, I think that art is really important, that bringing the art, a lot of artists, because artists are in experience and artists are about, the pleasure, the joy. And
sure, it's about appreciating beauty and appreciating nature and life. Sure.
Yeah, defocus from rumination, from fears, from worries, into creativity, into something that can help us to be. As soon as a person goes into the will and work in clay, it takes about 5-10 minutes and the focus is already there. And so it's really hard to ruminate and do arts or do something, difficult in exercise, like you are on a balance beam. It's really difficult. Or play the games. Once you in athletics, you play the game. You are not in the mind of thinking over whatever it happens to you. But it's important the experience that it is, and it also it's important is the improvement. So it's not only that you experience good and joy, but it really the improvement has to happen for people. We have to feel good. We have to feel that we mean something, that something is important, something the self-esteem is growing with the pride that we are getting better, we are improving.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, it sounds like the purposeful life, which I think is important. And what would you say also, just as we're the last thing, that, right behind you, and I read that, it's really a great line, hard choices, easy life, easy choices, hard life. What would you give as the example of easy choices, hard life? Not striving, not going ahead. I mean, what would, how would you define that?
Yeah, well,
that
easy
line?
choice would be to tell yourself to be hostile to yourself, and you would say to yourself, "I'm not good enough."
So it's self-esteem.
Well, if you tell yourself you're not good enough, is really tough.
You're defeated already.
Yeah, exactly. It's really horrible, right? It's tough, but it's a hard choice for that person. Let's say if the person I worked today with a person in Germany. She's there, and then we talk about, because she really addressed that she's not good enough. So for her to say I'm good enough, that's a hard choice. She will say I'm good enough because she doesn't believe in it. Her whole believing system has to shift, right? So that person, right, to take the person from an easy choice, I'm not good enough, to the really using hard choice. Sometimes you got to spend months with the person before the person really gets to the place that accepts the present moment, accepts where the person is, and say, well, I am good. I am good enough. And I'm also will be working to get better in this and this and that. But at the present moment, acceptance of the present moment is the hard choice. Usually we want to be a lot of better than we are, or we think that we are horrible, that we are not good.
It's really important you say that. I remember reading once the Dalai Lama when he was doing a tour of the United States, and they asked him, I guess, something to the effect of what surprised him most about the United States. And he said he was surprised about the pervasiveness of lowest self-esteem among especially young people. And I think what you're saying, it really hits that on the head. And so if by doing weights and working on you, I think this is all about, and I think your book, Happy Body, is all about working on yourself to hopefully help serve and help others. It sounds like that's been the theme of your life.
Yeah, we start with lifestyle medicine, and the Happy Body is this lifestyle medicine that has mindful, meditative exercise system, breathing to calm down the heart is pranayama breathing, and then also takes care of the flexibility of the posture, everything else, and releases the stress. So after 30 minutes, we should really be refreshed. We should be feel freedom in our body. We should feel good that what happened to us, and not really being beat up by exercise that really worn us out.
Right.
So it's more complex. We do not value experience. We only value the experience of the exhaustion, but we really don't value the experience of the power of the never been tired. I've never been tired in my life. Not exhausted, not tired. I don't live that kind of a life. Why I would exhaust myself? People say no pain, no gain. Or I say pain, no gain.
I
First,
think that's also another good saying that people should get straight. Well,
exactly.
Jerzy, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to finish up, but thank you so much for your time. I've always wanted to meet you somehow, some way. As I said, I love the book, The Happy Body, and I hope all our listeners benefit and listen carefully to your advice.